So welcome. It is Thursday, June, July, August. It's August 7th. It is 4:45, and this is the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Duluth District 709. And we have presentations and discussions today, and I'm going to turn it over to Clerk Mike Sal to take roll.
Member Banks.
Here.
Chair Eater.
Present.
Member Leffler-Kemp.
Here.
Member Lofald.
Here.
I am Member Mikesell, and I'm here. Member Sadowski.
Here.
Member Williams.
Here.
Superintendent Magus.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Bonds.
Present.
Secretary Brown.
Here.
And roll call is done.
Thank you. And we're going to, we have two items on our agenda under improving systems. It's A on the agenda, the 25-26 progress monitoring calendar overview, and then B, board discussion on committee of the whole format. And I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bonds, but also know that Chair Eater also has kind of some opening comments after you. No, I suppose it's under B. She'll do B, you'll do A. Maybe. And then Chair Eater is remote for those community members that are live streaming. So we're glad to have all of us here.
And on that note, just related to, for the public to know as well, because you might not have seen like location and remote, the state statutes regarding remote participation have changed as of late. So there isn't a need to notify ahead and post that a board member is remote. However, if it were a regular board meeting where we were taking a vote, all votes need to be roll call votes if members are participating remotely. We just had a refresher on that this morning through MSBA, so I figured I would mention it for the public in case the public is watching and had questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Magus. And as you see, we have two agenda items. This is our first COW meeting of the school year for the 25-26 school year. And so it's appropriate for us to kick it off by actually having conversations on things the board and the community can expect in terms of presentations. And so that's what we're going to discuss in our first item. And then there's going to be discussion related to the format for our COW meetings. And I know Superintendent Magus is going to lead that. But everyone should have received, and I believe, Kelly, you've received it as well, a document from John that refers to the board reporting and progress monitoring document. It's a blue document that looks like this. The board should be familiar with it because probably was a different color last year, but it's a document that we have used over the last couple of years that walks us through and walks the board and the community through how we are aligning our strategic plan and our strategic efforts, ensuring that we are providing presentations and updates related to those items. We have, as part of our ongoing effort to make improvements, we've decided to move into a different format because of feedback we received related to the presentations. So at the very top of this blue document, you will see a number of bulleted items. Under the first item, where there's a lot of bullets, it says board reporting and progress monitoring. Board reporting and progress monitoring. Under that item, you will see several bullets, starting with vision card review, high-level action card overview, right? So those items. And so all those different items, you will see those are items connected to our strategic plan. And so we are committed as a team to make sure we provide reports related to those items. So I'll stop there so you can ask any questions. So under the category of board reporting and progress monitoring, those are items connected to our strategic plan that we are committing as a team to making sure that we provide updates as it relates to those items during our COW meeting.
Questions? Are you open for questions right now?
Yes, we just relate to that specific area. Chair Derek Eater.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I just wanted to give us a little context around just sort of the purpose today. Like everything in education, we are constantly looking to see if the systems that we use are productive and are driving us towards an end goal, which is serving all of our students. So in our where we constantly are working to improve systems, we thought it would be a great opportunity to have a conversation around how is the committee of the whole meeting serving the board members to make decisions for every student every day. So this is an opportunity just for us to brainstorm, to think about, and to contextualize the work that we do at the committee of the whole meeting. Now, if that means that the way that we are doing this looks great and we are all satisfied with the outcome, then that doesn't mean we have to make any changes. If there's a few things that we would like to think about in context of the committee of the whole meeting, we can maybe make a few tweaks, but this is really about an opportunity for all of us to think about how the committee meeting serves us, and then how the committee of the whole meeting serves staff as well and student as well. So this is just an opportunity for us to do a little deep dive into our work, think about how we use this time and how we use this time to serve the kids of the district. So I want to make sure and thank Superintendent Bond, Assistant Superintendent Bond, Superintendent Magus, but especially all of our board members today for the opportunity to really think about how we do this work collectively together in the end result of doing good things for kids and staff. So thank you all for being here today and coming with an open mind and an open heart.
Thank you for sharing that. And then I'll go to Superintendent Magus. So again, underneath those categories for board reporting and progress monitoring, you see those items. And then there are other reports that are annual in nature, that are presented annually. And so there's another category of several items that are potential items that will be coming to the board for presentation. So we have those things that are connected to our strategic plan, and then we have the annual reports such as looking at our school improvement plans or our continuous improvement plans, our what was known as the world's best workforce, or our achievement data presentations. Those are all things that will still come or potentially come to the COW meeting, so we have to make sure that we identify them here. Superintendent Magus?
Sure. And I certainly didn't mean to make more of this with the topic and the conversation. Normally at this meeting, we come with a drafted list with all the, and calendar with all the different presentations and where we plan to put them. But at a recent school board workshop, we had conversation about not being sure if we wanted as many presentations. We thought maybe going deeper with fewer topics might lend things better for board support and decision-making. And so before we populated the calendar and before we put everything together, we just wanted to have some conversation around this to say, you know, is the format that we've used exactly what you want? Do you want us to change things in some way, shape, or form? We didn't want to be presumptuous and fill the entire calendar for the year without having more conversation with the board. So that's really, these two items are kind of intertwined as far as the layout of what we have for the board progress monitoring and then the annual reports. And then after that, there's kind of the draft schedule with some of the things and where those are kind of the necessary things that need to be populated. But we wanted to get your feedback before we went further. And we also don't want this, we don't want this to be a waste of time for the board either, that we're just talking about how we want to work this throughout the year. But we did feel like it was important for us before we populated the entire calendar to have this conversation with the board.
You want to call on people?
Yes. Member Laffer-Kemp?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for this handout so that we could follow along, and I appreciate this opportunity for us to talk about the Committee of the Whole meetings. I also really appreciate, as a board member, all the presentations we have had since we switched over to the Committee of the Whole meetings. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but just in terms of being a well-educated board and being able to give accurate information to the public, and Assistant Superintendent Bonds, I know you've been the mastermind behind making sure all those, we've had all those presentations, so thank you. I appreciate this list of the annual presentations that I think most of them we're required to do.
That's
right? Yeah. So appreciate that being listed as well. I guess my question in terms of board reporting and progress monitoring, were you thinking, or do you feel like all those categories that you have listed there, you have touched on in our committee of the whole meetings in some format?
That is correct, yes.
I believe you have, but I just wanted to, like,
Yeah, I would say the one thing we haven't talked about is the vision card work that you see, both the first bullet under board reporting and then the last bullet with an overview of what vision card will be and then end of year report. We've suggested that we do those in October and then in May. Basically, the vision card is, and if you remember from our strategic planning work with TeamWorks, they said that after you've worked with a strategic plan for a year or two, it's good to put together a dashboard of what are the key metrics, what are the key performance indicators for the district. And so we've worked with TeamWorks and we've nearly completed that, but we wanted to introduce that to the board as well, so that it's a public-facing document and really talks about what are the key performance indicators and how are we going to measure to see if we're really meeting the strategic plan. Because, you know, I know we have good intention, but we also want to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to changing outcomes in meeting our desired daily experiences for students, staff, and families. So that would be something that's hasn't been part of our work before, but it kind of bookends the year related to those metrics.
okay, great, thanks. And just a follow-up to that then is, so again, with the Committee of the Whole annual presentations, were there any others that maybe weren't required by state law, but we felt have been good presentations? I think, were you the one, Jill, Member Loeffel, that said there were 168 presentations last year in the Committee of Whole meetings? I think you threw out that number.
Well, because we usually have, I kind of rounded it up to 3 presentations. Some had 5, some had 2, but we had 3, 12 months.
So I guess I was just curious then, with the list that you have, are there others that you could have added? They might not be required by law that we do, but have been.
Dozens.
Dozens,
And that's why
yeah.
we are, correct, there are dozens of presentations that are not listed here, so we are identifying the ones that are connected to the progress monitoring.
Okay.
And then the ones that we are required to give
Okay.
that come here annually. But there's always presentations related to, let's say, adult education may come and provide program updates on things that they're working on.
Community
right?
schools.
Community schools may come and provide an
safety.
update on things. Safety may
Facility,
provide an update. So there's dozens and dozens of other presentations that have been given at the COW meeting or during the COW meetings. And so that's why we're having this discussion, because there's dozens of other presentations that are possible, but we want to be mindful of how many presentations and the structure moving forward.
I would say too that oftentimes we've and I think it's important that the right after the title are the, in parentheses, subject to change, because sometimes there are hot topics or timely topics that come up that we need to address, and they become a major focus for just thinking back to, unfortunately, like the days of COVID, we had to think about masking and whether we're changing learning model. And I'm not saying we're going to have anything like that. Hopefully, we won't have any major things like that. But sometimes we need to change our cue of what we're presenting. But I also think what happened to some degree is we would have things that were planned out and scheduled, and then we'd have additional timely things that were added, and so we might end up with 7 presentations, and we're here for 4 hours, and by that time, I think I don't know if we were doing our best service to the board and being able to present in a way that was as constructive, and I don't know if it was conducive to board from a governance perspective and being able to oversee things. So we just wanted to make sure that we hit the right stride of how many reports we focus on and what depth we go into, so that we meet the expectations of the board.
Member Meixel?
Thank you. I appreciate this conversation. I'm looking forward to us continuing to talk this through. A few questions. So I'm noticing that in the first part of our list, there's 8 topics that are board reporting and progress monitoring. Are we going to spread those out over 12 months or over the 11 months if we don't have a cow during one of the summer months? Is that the intention, to have one of those and then one of the annual presentations at each cow?
The intention is to make sure that we cover them. There may be topics that 2 of those items might be covered during 1 month,
Okay,
right? But it is meant to communicate that we're going to cover them throughout the year, but doesn't necessarily mean that once a month, one of those items will come, because 2 of them may come, if necessary.
okay, thank you. And then I'm trying to remember back to like our individual action cards. I mean, we have action cards for a plethora of different priorities. And so when I'm thinking, I'm seeing that as 1 point on this 8-point list, I mean, I'm thinking that could take up 4 whole hours, you know? Is that the intention, that we're gonna do deep dives into all of those as we spread them out over the year? Or is it just one meeting we'll cover, or we'll spread it out over different meetings?
And I think that depends, and that's part of the second conversation, because we could obviously always provide a summary of all of them during one meeting, and it wouldn't take, the entire meeting, and it could be done then. Or if it's something that's important, I'm not gonna say important enough, if the desire is to have deeper conversations on individual action cards, then we would spread them out potentially over the year. So it just depends on, is the goal to provide a summary or in-depth conversations on each and every one of them? So it just depends on, I guess, the cadence of the meeting itself.
Okay, thank you for providing that, and that'll be good for us to discuss then. My last question for now, I'm just thinking of our policies on agenda setting. So, and I don't know if that policy is only for regular board meetings, or if that also includes our committee of the whole meetings. I assume it also would include committee of the whole meetings, any regular meeting. That's not changing our policy at all. Like if people, come together and want something to be added to the agenda, that's still going to be a possibility. Is that correct?
Yes, that is a possibility.
Great, thank you.
So to your earlier question about what we plan to do in October, we want to have a high-level action card overview. We would love to have it in September, but that first committee of the whole meeting, it's the first week of school, and it's challenging for us to have like a big committee of the whole report. But we want to provide sort of that 10,000-foot view of all the action cards, and then we would stagger more in-depth reporting on individual action cards throughout the year, spreading them out so that you would learn more. Like if we have an action card on implementation of artificial intelligence in the district, that seems like something that you'd want to spend some time on and not just have the high-level overview. So we'd want to schedule out where that would take place and go more deeply.
Your light was on.
Yes, it was, but I'm wondering so are we going to do the Cal annual presentations? That's where I want to speak to, or should I do that now? Because you said there's 2, is that incorporated in the conversation now?
The other items of the Cal annual presentation?
Yes.
Yes, that's part of this dialogue.
Okay, so I'm hoping, I know it was mentioned that there will be other presentations put on the list or added to the list. I want to put out there on the table that it's important, and I'm hoping this is going to happen, that EAC is added to that presentation, annual presentation, and the SROs. That be a part of the list as well. Is that possible?
SROs are on there
They are on
in
there?
September-ish.
Okay, I didn't see that, thank you.
But I see what you're saying, it's not in the bullet items as an annual presentation.
Right.
I see that, I see what you mean. But we are, it is on it is one of them, but we're looking at the section file up top as well as the report from the EAC.
Okay, thank you.
Make sure my mic is on. For the live stream, what I indicated was that the SROs, as of right now on this document that we are looking at, is not under the Kyle annual presentations, but we will add it as a bullet there. But the intention is to have an annual presentation for our SROs, for our SRO programming, as well as the second piece was related to EAC, a report from EAC. We'll make sure that that's identified here as well. Member Lawford?
I don't, you can correct me if I'm going to put us off track or confuse the already somewhat confusing when we want to kind of digest all of this opportunity to discuss our committee of the whole. So when it came up at our last workshop, at least in my mind, the context was that, you know, there are times when the board needs just more time to talk as board members on topics, on issues, on things that have either been presented in the COW or in our regular board meeting, and have conversation in like a workshop setting where we have this ability to meet and discuss. And so I love that we have the COW loosely agenda items here in front of us, like we have had in other years, and that we have an opportunity to, you know, kind of look at our structure, like how many meetings can this school board, you know, realistically ask each other to do, and what are we trying to solve in looking at our committee of the whole? Is it to change it up? You know, when we've, you know, because we've been doing it now for about 3 years, 4 years, and, you know, the information is robust. Like Member Loeffler-Kemp said, we get a lot of information that helps us meet our public and be able to talk with some confidence. So when we look at how we want to structure, or if we want to structure, or if we're looking for other ways to have conversation, you know, I like the format of COW, but I do know that there are times when there's a lot of presentations, and somewhat it's because our staff really feel the need. They might not be on the schedule right at this minute, but I can guarantee you, come October, there will be somebody that will come to Assistant Superintendent Bonds and say, you know, at this point in our journey, whether it's curriculum, whether it's community ed, whether it is full community service schools, whether it is our legislative platform work, whatever it is, it's going to come. And we've already got, you know, maybe 2 things on our agenda, which is about an hour and a half meeting for us. And we're going to add 1 more thing or 2 more things. So what direction do we want to give the leadership, the assistant superintendent especially, that crafts this? Do we want to, you know, in my mind, I'm not tonight looking to get rid of the committee of the whole meeting and change it up for something different. I'm not. I've liked what we've done, but I also know that if the board, if our need is to find some way to open up a door of a time to meet where we can have more conversation on some deeper topics, what does that look like? How do we get that time without adding a whole nother meeting? So, you know, I like what we've got in front of us, and but I don't, you know, I could ask for different examples of the things under board reporting and progress monitoring, but I don't really need to know that. I know there's going to be things underneath there. I've loved that we have had things on improving systems, advancing equity, and every student, every day. Those 3 legs of the stool that they bring presentations for has been really a really good format for me personally, for the information we get, and then sharing it with our public. So I'm just kind of throwing that out, like, how much do we have to, how much do you want to change our committee of the whole meeting? And do you? And what can we lead with our leadership? And then how do we get time in our schedule for deep dives?
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Okay, I have no 2 comments based on what Jill said, but our Member Lofold said. So I guess just again, I really, I've been on the board for 12 years. I've seen the committee of the whole get established. We used to have something called the Education Committee, which frankly was one of my favorite meetings, that monthly meetings as well, just because of having the opportunity for staff to present to us.
Remember, that was a committee, so only 3
No,
years.
no, I understand that, but you just interrupted me, Jill. Okay, so I was just saying, we used to have that, and in the Education Committee was where we had staff doing presentations, a lot like the Committee of the Whole, and how much I appreciated having staff having the opportunity to present to us. They're the ones doing the hands-on work out there. And so I want to reiterate, I've appreciated that. But I also, and I appreciate this list of what we're required to do and some additional ones that we might add. And that was actually going to be one of my questions when I was asking about this original list, is how do we as board members, if there are presentations we think are important, helpful, how do we add to that list? And that we still have the opportunity to do that. And then secondly, I would like more discussion at times with the board on certain topics, but after say, a committee of the whole meeting where we've just gotten a lot of great information, and even though we've had that information ahead of time to digest, I'm taking notes like crazy, like I know everybody else is, and thinking of additional questions that I might not ask at that time. But so I don't think I'd be ready to go deep dive into some conversations when we've just had the information presented. So then it gets at Jill, Member Lofold's comment about, so how many meetings can we afford to have and have people take time away? But I don't know, in my mind, and maybe it's just because of the way I learn, I like the committee whole structure where it's kind of educational. We do ask questions, we learn from each other a little bit, but then in terms of any other deeper dive on any of these one topics, I need a little bit more time to kind of think it through and kind of think about what was just presented. And maybe some of my questions are questions that, I just need to, get answers to. I need to figure out that I don't want to kind of have deep conversation with the board, but I want some time to kind of think about it and reflect on what my thoughtful board members share as well with their questions. So I guess those are just kind of two comments. One is I do like the way the committee of the whole structure is. I do support doing further conversation. I would prefer to do it in more of a retreat than another formal meeting, because I think that does allow us to have, it's just a different setting than the formal presentation setting that we're in when we're in or not retreat, we call them workshops. But so those are a few of my thoughts. I think this is a good start. And a good start to the calendar that you have on here as well of when certain topics would come up. But I do, as a board member, want to know where I can kind of say, well, I think these 4 topics of that 168 topics we had last year are important to me and the community I represent, or the issues I hear about from the public.
Member Sadowski?
Yeah, I mean, lots of thoughts. I would share that I've really enjoyed the committee of the whole since I've been on the board too. It's really helpful when I'm out in the community and can share all the amazing programs that we have here. I don't think I would have been as effective of a board member as I hope I've been to be able to share a lot of the programs and curriculums and just different things that are going on in all our schools. But I also think there is a need to take a deep dive sometimes into some topics. I think that that's been a kind of a spot where we could improve on. It seems like I understand too, we have a lot of meetings, and so where would we add an extra meeting? So it's a balance. As I was listening to everyone, I wrote down the word like a hybrid model, or, maybe it's I'm just brainstorming because we're just having a conversation, but like a quarterly, once a quarter, maybe one of our committee of the whole, we take something we learned at one of the other committee of the wholes, and then we could do a deep dive or something like that. One that kind of comes to mind is what Member Banks brought up, was the SROs. We had a robust conversation and dialogue about that last month. We passed that contract, but we also talked about, hey, we might want to, if we're going to look at that a little bit harder, then that would be good to do, more in advance. And that's another thought that I had just for committee of the whole in general, is just taking a look ahead, like where are we going to have votes on any different topic? And can we get some information about that, a quarter before at least, or 5 months or 6 months before, so that we all have time to digest and, like Member Loeffler-Kemp said, listen to comments from our colleagues, digest that, and really think about it. So that just kind of crossed my mind. That's kind of an aside. I pulled up, while I was listening to everyone, I pulled up past committee of the whole meetings, just from our board book here, and I have a whole long list of just different interesting topics that we got to learn about that aren't on here. And that's okay. I share Member Loeffler-Kemp. I would want to know, like, okay, well, how can we add things on to that? So I'm open to modifying it, but I would really miss if we couldn't hear about all these different things. I'll just read a few, like our Indigenous cohort, language access, the family handbook. I mean, just child nutrition. I could go on. And I know we can't do all of them either. So I'm probably not being very helpful here, but open to some sort of hybrid and more discussion and hearing from you all.
Member Lawford? Or
And Member Eder, is your hand up?
how about you, would you mind
Yep.
deferring? We'll go to you, Member Derek Eder, or Chair Derek Eder.
Sorry, thank you. Did you say me now, or did I?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just think it might help if we take a couple minutes and we figure out what is the purpose of the committee of the whole meeting. And we've used it a lot in the past, very effectively. And I am in support of this as an information gathering space for board members. We do have some presentations and some things that we have statute that we have to address during the committee of the whole meeting. But when we think about the purpose of this meeting, is it really for us and the public just about information gathering, or is there some other aspect to this meeting that we can add to the information gathering? And if not, that's great too. I'm just thinking about that continuous improvement that we have as one of our priorities. Other than just information gathering, is there something we can do with that then we can use as work to be more effective board members in service of our community? And then I would just also add in some of our information gathering that we've had over the past couple of years. We have had these very, very long meetings where we have asked our staff to be there until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, with the expectation that they have to show up for our kids very early the next morning. So those are just some context that I would like for us to talk about, is what is our purpose with all the information we get, and then what do we envision using that information to and in support of our kids.
Thank you. Member Lawford?
I just want to make a comment too about ideas for what we could have on our COW committee. And I think agenda setting has always been open to any board member that has wanted to give a suggestion. And then that goes to the agenda setting committee, which is our board chair, Member Zadowski? No? Board chair and clerk. And assistant superintendent and Superintendent Magus. So I would encourage any of us to, share those ideas, and then they figure out what best month to put it in, or if it is something they can realistically, prepare or get to us. So listening to some of our comments, I think that when we look at all the great things that we have heard over in my 164 presentations is really over my 4 years. So I think I was talking maybe at a at a meet and greet or something for our work in the community. And I just meant over my 4 years, I've heard that many presentations. But, and we like them, and I like Chair Eater's comment about, we like them, but sometimes, if our purpose is, to get information so we vote on it the next month or the next week, those are important. Maybe just simply talking about and giving direction to the agenda setting team that our committee of the whole meetings, we can keep the structure just the same, we just maybe, limit, like, we are only going to go 2 hours, or two, we could give that direction, or two, whatever you think is a realistic committee of the whole. And then as we approach those committee of the whole meetings as board members, maybe having only a 15-minute discussion period after each presentation. Or, there's ways we could monitor ourselves so that our committee of the whole could be just like it is now, with a little bit of observation about how many presentations we have. But it does, I've been on agenda setting meetings, for a good number of years, and it does start to be 2 or 3 at the most. And then we get these needs, like we might have already set up 3, and then we realize that this department needs this looked at before the next board meeting, so, because we have to vote on it. And I know you've got the ones that we vote on right here, but there are other ones that seem to come in because of some change in statute, or just we didn't realize that they needed a vote on. So, the committee of the whole is a great meeting. People around the state don't have this kind of meeting, most of them don't. And so I really think that we are really good board members because of the things we learn. But if we need to have an opportunity for more discussion, and I don't even know how we would know, like, we have 4 workshop dates right now, right? I was trying to find them while somebody else was speaking, like, what is our next workshop date? And how many I know that our calendar is out, Patty gave it to us in July, so it's usually something like October, and then there is a January one somewhere, and then there's usually a March, and then maybe a June. And we tend to use those for governance, which can lead to deep dive on topics, but maybe we have to make sure that if there are things that need more digestion, topics, issues that are going to make a difference in a vote that we take, that those workshops are really structured for that purpose. And yes, I like book studies, and I like following governance, or learning more about it. But sometimes those workshops might be better on topics like, and some of the things that we could put on our deep dive are things that might be down the road 2 or 3 years. Again, some of the conversation over SRO is, what is it going to look like come next contract time? We are set with SROs for the next 3 years, at least in my mind. And so what does that look like in 3 years? So that's a deep dive at some meeting.
Thank you. I know Superintendent Magus' hand was up for quite some time, and then we'll go to others. Superintendent Magus.
Sure. So the list of things that we have here was not intended to be an all-inclusive list. It was a list of what were the minimums of what we needed to, so kind of start with pour those in first, and then think about what do we want to add to it. So there's the board reports and progress monitoring that we pretty much have to do, and then what are the annual presentations that we have to do. And to your point, Chair or Member Lofold, I think what I think we could do is still have, like you said, if we do better about limiting the amount of time that we spend on each topic, and we've kept it open-ended, and sometimes the topic that I think will take 20 minutes might take 2 hours. And so if we at least try to keep it relatively time-bound, but then have flexibility as a board, if you feel like we need 15 more minutes on this, or we need another half an hour on this because it's very pressing, we can adjust. As far as what topics we bring, I think trying to make sure that we're listening to what does the board as a whole want is important, and also at the same time thinking from when we think about like what is the purpose, I look at the purpose of those reports is also around accountability, holding us accountable to what we said. If we have certain strategic directions within our strategic roadmap, and we have certain action cards that are supposed to get us to the outcomes that we desire, then what are the reports that we want you to hear so that you know that we're doing what we say we're going to do so that we can have the outcomes. For instance, we have an action card on our literacy work, right? That would be something that very tightly ties from a strategic standpoint of what are we doing to support every student every day, right? So we want to make sure that we're not just and I'm not saying this happens often, but we're not just taking random ideas from community members or others that aren't necessarily as tightly aligned to what we need to do from an accountability and strategic roadmap perspective.
Chair Derek Eater, and then I'll come to Member Loeffler Camp. Your mic for us. No problem.
Bummer, okay, so many amazing things to say right there. So I think to Member Loeffler Camp's very salient point about giving people time to digest, I'm wondering if the board would think it would be helpful if we actually, with Clerk Micah, myself, Assistant Superintendent Bonds, and Superintendent, if we structured this in a yearly format so that, like Member Loeffler Kemp says, you get these amazing presentations and you really need to think about them and you really need to digest them. So if we put a calendar together and marked on there where we have really big, important things that we need to vote on, and maybe a month or two prior to that, we sort of focus a committee of the whole meeting to sort of support and uplift some of these decisions that we have to make. That's something we can really work on ahead of time and put out to our board and talk about that as to where we think things could be placed, but start thinking about in a yearly context so that we're not just thinking month to month, but really thinking about continuing across this year using milestones of votes and then structuring of a committee of the whole meeting, part of it to support those big votes, and then also part of it to being this wonderful information gathering time where we really learn about our schools so we can go out and evangelize to our community. So I'm just sort of throwing that out there and asking the board if they think that would be something useful that would help and support them as we do this work.
Member Loeffler Kemp, and then Member Meixel.
Yeah, I kind of, I'm the last person to say, let's have another meeting. But I kind of was thinking about this. Well, maybe we do have two types of meetings. One is our committee of the whole meeting where it's touching on the presentations, and even though these are the minimal ones, but certain presentations besides these, and maybe I agree, I see committee of the whole meetings as both information gathering, accountability, but I also see them as relationship building. I mean, this is our opportunity for board members to really see the work, the great work, and kind of get to know our staff as well, and them get to know us as well. And so, I would add that third thing to what I value about the committee of the whole meetings. But I mean, could there be that calendar maybe where September we want to hit on these three other additional presentations, and maybe that's a different meeting. And then October, and we just kind of like a training, if you will, for the board, or an annual calendar that we can check off. We heard from adult basic ed, we heard from community schools, we heard from, and could that be a separate meeting that they all are tied to our strategic plan in different ways? All of those presentations are, of course they are, but maybe we're trying to do too much in just one meeting, and I'm not talking about the deep dive, I'm talking about just the educational and informational, but maybe there's two shorter meetings rather than the 1 4-hour meeting, but two 2-hour meetings, and one's covering these and one is covering some of those others.
Thank you. And as you can hear, Executive Brown is working really hard, typing away, trying to get all these great ideas. And so she's trying to capture everything right now. Member Mike, so.
Thank you. I just want to refer us back to policy 213, where that talks about our school board committees. And it states, in 2C, the school board may call a committee of the whole meeting for the purpose of discussing pending topics. And then it goes on to say that these are, meetings are structured to be discussion meetings, no formal action, no votes taking will happen at those committees, or at the committee of the whole meeting. So we all know that and understand that, but I just wanted to lay that, like, this is what's in our policy. I find it, your suggestion, Member Loeffler Kemp, interesting, of having our committee of the whole meetings that point to these salient, like, annual presentations, things that have to happen. I appreciate Chair Eater's suggestion of, like, knowing when those big votes have to happen, making sure that we're getting information months ahead of time, not day of or week of before, or, you know, within that same month. Sometimes, like, I would appreciate that. I also, I think, echo many of the statements that we have about learning about the different programs that we have in our district. The educational part of the committee of the whole that we've had in this last year and a half that I've been on the board has been so helpful to me, as it sounds like to other members here, speaking with our community and really talking about the good work, really rebuilding and building trust and excitement in our community for our schools. That's a really good opportunity. And if we didn't have that as much, I would hope that that would come in some different way, which just makes another meeting longer. Like, I would imagine the superintendent might include some of that in his superintendent's report. But then if we have questions and the people that he's speaking of aren't here, and we, like, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I would be interested in exploring if we had a committee of the whole that talks about the things that are coming up that we're going to have votes on, that we need to just, like, have the information for, and then potentially a secondary meeting where it's those times where our staff and our students and our community members can come in and share the good work of the district. I think that's good not only for the people sitting in this room, but also for our staff to see and for our community as well. So I would support exploring that a little bit more. But then last point, it seems as though we're just talking about our current committee of the whole structure as it is right now. Like, all these different, some of these different ideas, minus the, you know, possibly breaking it up into two, but just wanted to point that out.
Superintendent Magus?
Sure. Thank you for all this great feedback. And I think really even, I think we have begun to get a clearer perspective on what people are wanting and desiring. And I think trying to listen for the center, I think I'm hearing that there is quite a bit of value in many of the structures that we've had in place with the committee of the whole. We just want to quite possibly tighten some things up, maybe look at some other structures. And wondering, since our October was the date that we're going to come back with more of a structure, that's what we proposed of what this looks like. If maybe we have Chair Dirk Eater and maybe another person or two work with myself and Mr. Bonds and Executive Assistant Brown to put together a draft to share, and then it could also be something we could share out ahead and give up opportunity for people to give us individual feedback on it, and then we could move forward. That way would, I think, I find myself thinking I'm probably going to listen to this meeting again as well, just because I think that there are a lot of ideas, and I want to make sure that we get them all down and try and listen for the center as much as possible so that we can define what it is that we're looking for. But wondering if the board would entertain that as a possible solution or option, that we move forward, that we're not changing things extremely significantly. We're not ending committee of the whole or ending the reports, that there's value there, but that we also think about how can we structure things in a way that is front-loading decision-making and allowing for relationship building and allowing for opportunity for the board to be knowledgeable and celebrate the great things that are going on, and also make it a productive, strategically aligned, accomplishable goal.
Member LaFleur-Kemp?
I support what you're saying, and in terms of coming back in October. I guess I go back to, again, board members looking at that list of, and I think my 12 years on the board, I've probably had 500 presentations. I just did my math. No, but no, looking at least like the last 2 years and just the presentations that, you know, we have had, so that we all as board members, just not a couple board members, have the opportunity to, you know, give feedback on what that, if we did do a calendar of topics, look like. I think we all should be able to participate in giving that feedback.
Member Lofold, and then Member Chair Derek Eater.
So in actuality, in my mind, we need a little bit more of a deeper dive on this committee, the whole thing, that we came together and now we listen to each other. Because I'm not, you know, you'll come back in October with what? You know, it's kind of like, we've kind of said that we like the structure. We'd like to have some opportunity to give ideas for topics. And then I think it would be interesting, and I know that Assistant Superintendent Bonds has some document like this. It's probably is because there is a running agenda for COW that he has for the agenda setting meeting that he does with the clerk and the board chair. So, you know, we could get a list. It'd be interesting to see a list of, even if it's just the last year. So even when someone would like to suggest a possible topic for a COW meeting, they can see what we did last year, and maybe we would like an update on that, or maybe we wouldn't necessarily need a presentation since we had one. But, I mean, I don't know what, I think I heard that, at least I've said that maybe making sure it doesn't go more than 2.5 hours would be, you know, doable. I like the fact that we've moved other meetings off of days, so we're not doing a HR business and then a COW meeting afterwards. We're not doing a policy and then an HR. You know, we all have kind of separate days, which I appreciate, because you just get home earlier and you don't have a long time. So we've already made kind of that one adjustment that I think helps the COW meeting. But I'm just interested in what we're coming back with in October from the conversation here. I'll have to listen to this too.
No problem. And as John or Superintendent Maggs thinks on that, how we're going to close this out at some point. Also, some of the presentations, and then I'm coming to you, Chair Derek Eater. Also, some of the things that are requests from our staff. Again, a lot of really, really amazing programming happening and initiatives happening and asks to be in front of the board. And we respect that. That's why we have so many presentations, because we want to honor that and see something that comes out of the music program or our CTE program or our, you know, other areas, because there's some really, really amazing work happening, and we want to celebrate that and support them. And our community does like to hear that, and we know the board does as well. And it does lend itself to very, very, sometimes long meetings, and that's why we're having the discussion. So I appreciate all of the feedback. And there are opportunities where, as we get those requests, not saying to diminish them, but there might be times where some of those things could be presented and shared with the board in a different fashion, as other updates that we could send to the board. The board could potentially acknowledge receiving those things, and then recognizing the receipt of those reports and still publicly acknowledging those individuals and that programming. Again, not to minimize them, but again, we just need to look at all the asks. It becomes quite extensive, and we end up having very, very long agendas. And there's so many presentations that you don't even see, that we just tell the individual that the agenda is too full or we can't. And that's unfortunate as well. So Chair Derek Eater, and then Superintendent Maggis. Oh, I apologize. Did you just turn on?
Oh, I literally just turned it on.
Oh, okay, I thought I
Yeah.
missed it. No, she has it on for the, she has it on for Kelly.
I don't have anything to say.
Yeah, she does it. Derek, Chair Derek Eater.
So this has been just a want to maybe get some direction from the board of what I can do in this moment and within the structure with Clerk Mike Cassell with our agenda setting meeting. Is would the board be open if we sort of structured that calendar out for a year, and then with us thoughtfully trying to plan and place some of those very important topics, and then see where within that calendar we have room and desire for some more of that information gathering, and then collectively we figure out together, okay, what is it we want to hear in this time that we have? Would that be something that the board would be interested in for us to pursue? And then second to that, I'm thinking if I went back and looked, let's say for the last 2 years, and really looked at the topics we had and saw where we heard a lot or where we haven't heard as much, and then use some of that data to inform some of this scaffolding of some of this information gathering, with the full acknowledgement and openness to figuring out if there's a desire from within the board for some additional information or an additional presentation, that we will always make room for that as available, and then sort of think about a structure for board members to do that, to offer these suggestions or whatever. Is that something that the board is interested in happening? And that work could be done, September, so that there would be plenty of time for all of us to digest and think and be creative. So when we come back in October, we can really do the fine tuning on this work. So I just, let me know everybody's thoughts, and I'm very happy to move forward sort of with whatever plan you want.
So that we can stay on topic for this, for Chair's question, let's respond to that first, and then we'll come to Member Sadowski.
Chair Eater, I just want to point out that we do have policy 203.5, which sets out a very explicit direction on how to add items to the agenda. So just letting you know that any conversations that take place, we should be referring to that to make sure that we're basing it on current policy. And if we have to change that policy, we'd have to, for any reason, we'd have to go through the policy committee to do so. Yeah, 203.5.
What was that policy number? I just missed it. I want to get it back.
Sure, it's 203.5, school board meeting agenda.
Member Sadowski?
I think my comments relate to what you said, Chair Eater. As you were talking, I mean, I just wanted to say, as far as the agenda, I sat on the agenda setting for a while. I didn't sit on it the first year, not sitting on it now. I just want to share, I've never had any concerns about whether, if there was a topic that I felt I would like to hear about, I felt very confident in the leadership of the board and the leadership of our administration that we would get the information on that topic, whether it's in the committee of the whole or otherwise. And I feel like, for me, the conversation seems to have taken a turn away from, are we talking about, it seems like we're talking more about topics and the topics on the board than we are talking about the deep dives. And that, I'm just kind of reflecting on that. That's where I feel the conversation has gone. And I just wanted to share, I just have never felt like there's been a difficulty getting information. I think it would be if we totally changed the cow, but it doesn't sound like we're talking about that. I also had a follow-up for you when you were saying, and I believe that there's so many presentations that maybe we don't get or we don't have time for. I just had the thought, geez, I'd love to hear from them anyway. If they could put together a PowerPoint or notes and just email us for any of those, that would be great, because that's just helpful. So, if someone ever prepared for a meeting and then didn't get the chance, it'd be great and respectful of their time and helpful for us if they sent it on over. So I don't know, that's probably not helpful, but I feel like the conversation went away from deep dives, at least from my perspective, so.
Member Banks?
Thank you. I need clarification mostly. So I'm wondering, as I listen to folks speak, Are we saying then that we want to focus solely on those areas that need immediate attention, remediation, or change within the district at our CAL meetings, or what are we specifically saying? Because if we are saying that, shouldn't we do that by bringing those areas in our school district that need help, need change? Shouldn't that be a part of the CAL presentations? So we really know what's going on and what the needs are in those specific areas? Because we have a lot going on in the district that's going very well. But what are those areas that need immediate attention from the school board and from administration that we need to know about? So I would like to get clarification on that because I think it's necessary as we continue to be one of the better school districts. We know that we have those areas that still need our attention.
Superintendent Magus?
And I agree, because I think part of the work of the committee of the whole is progress monitoring for accountability, right? And one of my main intentions ever since I started was to think about how do we link progress monitoring really tightly to our strategic plan. And I believe that the vision card work that we do this year is going to better lay out where our not just our points of strength, because it's great to celebrate points of strength. It was great being here with the solar kids yesterday, but there are points of need for improvement that we want to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to those as well. And so I think that having that vision card process and having some room in our agenda too, so things can organically surface. So if we realize like, oh my gosh, our third grade reading scores have deeply bottomed out, the board might want a report, and I'm just making something up there. We might want to decide that we need some reports on what are we doing around reading. So I think it's important for us to have flexibility and use progress monitoring as a supportive accountability tool, not a punitive accountability tool, but supportive accountability.
Member Lothar?
So I'll agree with Member Zadowski that, I think that the whole impetus for even our conversation tonight is that at our last workshop, we somewhat suggested that when we get to tough topics, we're so full with other items in our presentations that we don't have that time. And the workshops don't always align with our need for conversation at a workshop session. So I think that you're right. So, when I think about it, it's like, I think we thought about, can we look at the committee of the whole meeting and tighten it up a little bit so that if we needed an extra meeting or that we would have that. Not that, not to walk away from what we really have for the committee of the whole, but is there some more direction we could give that would allow for those other opportunities? I also know that as a board chair, when I was board chair, Patty would do her best to survey us to get a time that would work for us. And we even are finding that out even now. I think we're trying to set up a revisit with TeamWorks and Ray Queener, but none of our responses to her question or her dates worked for all of us. So it is incredibly complicated to try to get all of us together if it's not originally on the schedule. And so there might be a time, I wouldn't know this, but we have to be flexible. Like if we have a committee of the whole meeting coming up in February, but there is an issue that arises that becomes important, do you really scale back that committee of the whole or cancel? I don't know. Yeah. So I think you're right. Like it's just, do we want a fifth workshop put on now it's the beginning of a new year, we could do that, or I don't really know what we need. I mean, I do like those 4 workshops, and maybe instead of continuing to kind of look at that governance and our book talk, which I do like as well, that we really start looking at other deeper dives. The other thing I'll say too is that don't preclude that think about a more recent committee of the whole presentation. That presentation could be given to us at a school board meeting. Other districts do it somewhat that way. If we have a a need to hear about a curriculum review or an upcoming, you know, something with AI or any of those types of things that we traditionally put on our committee of the whole. There could be a 15-minute presentation at a school board meeting, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, I don't, but there, you know, what if we were to look at the structure of our school board meeting? Is it state statute? And I'll look to policy and you know, that says we have to review, do we have to give reports about policy and HR business at our school board meeting? Do you have to do that 15-minute? And I like it, don't tell me I don't. But we review what we just did the week before. I don't know. I watch a lot of other school boards and they don't do that, but maybe they don't have committee meetings like we do either. So just kind of brainstorming, which I think is what this meeting is all about, is trying to bring ideas. And then Sarah, or member Mike Sell, I wonder if policy 203.5 is really specific to our school board meetings that have to follow the policy of how you put something on the agenda. Because I think the committee of the whole, I don't think that, I mean, I could be wrong. I don't think that's the policy. I don't think we have a policy that particularly specifically addresses committee of the whole agendas. They're much less formal, maybe. I'll end.
So I will circle back to what Chair Derek Eater shared moments ago, and what John has shared. I think everyone here, this conversation is in response to a need to have some dialogue on how to move forward, especially now as we talked about bringing us back also to improving systems. So that's why we're having this conversation. So I really appreciate the feedback, and we do. I think the ask by Chair was to provide us the opportunity to revisit all of the suggestions and to work together to develop a structure or report how things will progress moving forward, having considered everything that is being discussed here, because it is varied in terms of the need, right? We have the need to make sure that our staff has a chance to be in front of the board, that the board hears critical information in a timely fashion, that we are holding ourselves accountable for our strategic goals and items, that we meet the needs of providing the annual reports that are required by us, and that there's opportunities and flexibility to provide additional presentations if needed when there are critical topics or time-sensitive topics. So I think there's an agreement that this information is really important, and I think we just need time to really work through all of the information that was shared and to move forward with the format and the calendar that hopefully will meet everyone's needs. Chair, would you like to share anything else, and/or Superintendent Magus?
I just want to thank everybody for the super thoughtful conversation. I think there's just a ton here. So I just want to give my thanks to you all for every day showing up and doing this work for our kids. So truly, thank you. There's a lot for us to work with moving forward, and to really, you know, get better at our job in service of our kids. So thank you all very much.
John?
I would reiterate that as well. I appreciate the thoughtful insights. I think listening for the center of this, it's going to take some reflection, and like I said, probably listening to the meeting again too, because I want to make sure that we really, when we put together that draft, that we're capturing as much as we can the essence of this conversation, listening to the center of what the board is asking for. And to Member Sadowski's point about are we really going deep? What have we considered for the deeper conversations, in addition to what Chair Lofold said about how can we use workshop time? I think that that's something that we can have more conversation on with that group, and I think that would be helpful. So very thankful for the group and appreciate the conversation today.
Member Lawford-Kemp?
Yeah, I just wonder if, and we could do this through a survey so that people would have time to think it through and think of their own schedules and that, but do we ask in a survey, would we like 6 retreat workshops versus the 4 we currently have, to allow for those deeper dive conversations. Would we like to do 2 committee of the whole meetings a month, or add an additional every quarter? I guess I'd like that to be part of that direction for the board chair to do, is to maybe throw out a few questions like that, because that was also, talked about not just by me as well. And, but people might feel more comfortable filling out a survey then, and kind of really doing their own thought process on that.
I appreciate that, and I think as well, sometimes people need time to process too, and so maybe an more open-ended question around, based on our conversation today, is there anything else that you want this subgroup to consider as we put things together? Because sometimes it might be 2 o'clock in the morning when you wake up in the middle of the night, and you might say, aha, this is what we could do.
Thank you. That concludes our presentations for today.
So if that concludes our presentations, we thank you all.